Morning.
Morning.
Welcome back. Now is time for opening arguments. And just to let you know, thank you. I'll start over and introduce myself. Thank you very much for being here. I know that you probably know, I think prior from the judge, who I am, but my name is Susan Zeiderveen, and I'm proud and honored to represent the state of Michigan and the people of Buren County as your elected prosecuting attorney. So now is the time for opening statements. It's our opportunity to tell you what to look for in the case, kind of our roadmap, what we plan to present to you over the course of the next several days, what evidence that we plan to present, and who will be testifying. So we talked a lot about in voir dire, about the charges and the elements. So I want to take a few minutes just to dive into what those elements are and what the charges are. We have count 1, first-degree murder, and we have count 2, felony murder. So what are the elements that we talked about that I need to prove to you? So for count 1, the very first element, the first box that we need to check, is that the defendant caused the death of Todd Stermer. That is, that Todd Stermer died as a result of the actions of the defendant. That's the first box. Second box, that the defendant intended to kill Todd Stermer. That's the second element. Third, that this intent to kill was premeditated. That is, thought out beforehand. And the last box, last element that I need to check on this count, is that the killing was deliberate, which means the defendant considered the pros and cons of the killing and thought about and chose her actions before she did it. There must have been real and substantial reflection for long enough to give a reasonable person a chance to think twice about the intent to kill. The law does not say how much time is needed. It's for you to decide if enough time passed under the circumstances of the case. And the killing cannot be the result of a sudden impulse without thought or reflection. Those are the 4 elements, the 4 boxes. So let's go to count 2. These are the 3 boxes for count 2. First, that the defendant caused the death of Todd Stermer. That is, that Todd Stermer died as a result of the actions of the defendant. Second box, that the defendant had one of these 3 states of mind. She intended to kill, or she intended to do great bodily harm to Todd Stermer, or she knowingly created a very high risk of death or great bodily harm, knowing that death or such harm would be the likely result of her actions. That's the third box. The second. Third box is that when she did the act that caused the death of Todd Stermer, the defendant was committing or attempting to commit the crime of arson. Those are your elements. Those are the boxes that I will be then working to check over the next few days. I want to give you the definition that the court will give you of arson, because I think it's important in satisfying the second count. What is an arson? These are the elements of the arson. First, that the defendant burned, damaged, or destroyed by fire or explosive a dwelling. If any part of the dwelling is burned, no matter how small, that is all that is necessary to count as a burning. The property does not have to be completely destroyed. The dwelling is not burned if it's merely blackened by smoke, but it is burned if it is charred so that any part of it is destroyed. That's the first box. Second, that at the time of the burning, damaging, or destroying, the property that was burned, damaged, or destroyed was a dwelling or any of its contents. That's the second element. Last one, that when the defendant burned, damaged, or destroyed the dwelling or any of its contents, she intended to burn, damage, or destroy the dwelling or its contents, or intentionally committed an act that created a very high risk of burning, damaging, or destroying the dwelling or its contents, and that while committing the act, the defendant knew of that risk and disregarded it. Those are all of the elements or boxes. So let's start out with what happened. January 7th, 2007, deputies Tony Evans and Gary Gruss are dispatched to the house. It's a Sunday afternoon in January at approximately 3:30 in the afternoon. They go to County Road 215 for a reported structure fire. They find the Stermer residence in a fully involved fire. This is the scene that you will see and that we expect to present to you as they're driving in from their squad car. This is what they see. When they drive up, deputies locate several people standing on the north side of the residence. For those of you that are directionally challenged like I am, that's if you're looking at the front of the house, it'd be to the right of that picture. At this time, they locate Todd Stermer. He's laying in a pool of blood, approximately 20 to 25 yards from that side of that residence. Mr. Stermer this is unclothed. It's actually not 100% unclothed. His sweatpants and his underwear are pulled down to his ankles. He doesn't have a shirt on, and he's still wearing his socks. He is badly burned, and to say badly burned is an understatement. His burns cover almost all of his body. His hair is gone. His ears are deformed. His skin is slipping off his body. Due to his injuries, the people who are on scene try to move him farther from the home, just to be able to get him away from the fire and away from the house, and then they attempt to render aid. Due to the severity of Todd Stermer's injuries, he passes away shortly after people arrive due to those injuries. At this time, there are multiple people on scene, many of them who you'll hear from today. Mike Matheny, Connie Calhoun, our neighbors directly next door. Dr. Richard Musali, another neighbor, and Steve Leach, who was the fire chief at the time, all arrived within minutes and are on scene. You will hear from them what they saw and their statements. On January 7th, the day of the fire, the investigation starts. They call in, after the original deputies are there, they end up calling in the detectives. They call in Detective Gabrielle Rout, who is now retired, and Detective Tom Maziowski, who's also now retired. And they respond to the scene a little bit later in the day. The investigation starts. They start collecting all the evidence that they have on scene. They take numerous photographs, of which we expect to present to you. And they find a van, still running, located in the west of the Stermer residence. So those of you who are directionally challenged, the van is running in the backyard. Tire impressions are located, and the detectives mark them with flags, the tire impressions leading to the van. There are several items of clothing that the neighbors we listed, have taken out and placed on Todd's naked, burned body. Those items are also collected by the detectives and put into evidence. You will also hear, on January 7th, the day of the fire, people start trying to gather some initial statements. What happened? You're going to hear from Deputy Gary Gruss, hopefully today. He will tell you what Linda's first statement was. You will also hear from Detective Gabrielle Rout. She also talked to Linda Stermer on that day, and you will hear what she told Gabrielle Rout. As this investigation continues on the 7th and the 8th, Detective Sergeant Scott Leroy is brought to the scene. He's the fire marshal, and he's brought in to then inspect for the fire investigation. He arrives on the day of the fire on January 7th. He's actually there when Todd Stermer's there. He takes pictures of Todd. He takes pictures of the scene. And he's the one that seizes the sweatpants wrapped around Todd Stermer's ankles because he smells an accelerant. He also arrives on scene the next day and conducts a further investigation. He takes additional photographs of which you will see. He examines the structure of the house and possible causes of the fire. You will hear from Dr. Markey at Sparrow Hospital, who conducted the autopsy. You will hear his cause of death is from those burns that he suffered. You will also hear on January 8th, Don Galuz, who's a Buren County Sheriff's Department deputy, is called to the scene to do mapping and distances of the scene. So I'm going to show you, I think this will show up on all of them. This is the driveway coming into the house here. Oops. You can see the house. You can see the north side where the victim and the tire tracks are, here on the north. And you can see where the van is ultimately located in the backyard. And what makes this interesting is we expect to present to you details of the terrain of this yard. For those of you who are familiar with Michigan walkout basements, this is a walkout, meaning that where the body and the tire tracks are on the north side is a slope down. Where the van is at below the grade level, and there's sliding glass doors that lead out of the basement. He will explain the distance of the tire tracks. He will explain the distance from the house of the body and go over the scene in detail for you. You will also hear that on January 9th and 10th, James Shinsky is hired by the defendant's insurance company to conduct an investigation, their own investigation into the fire. He has a background as a fire investigator. He then does recorded interviews of Linda Stermer, with Linda Stermer, on January 9th and January 10th. You're going to start hearing, as people start digging in to the questions, start asking more questions, start going into the things that don't make sense, the explanations that the defendant starts giving, and how the story grows and changes. It's going to start here. That's her third statement. You are going to hear, we expect to present to you, Dave Hayhurst and Ann Hunt. They are both, Dave Hayhurst is with the Michigan State Police Laboratory, and Ann Hunt used to be and is now retired. They're going to talk to you about that van that was found in the walkout level in the backyard, that was driven by the defendant that day of the fire. They're going to talk about the multiple points that they examined, the evidence that was scraped from underneath the van, and how they evaluated it, and where it was found, and the results that is determined to be the blood of Todd Stermer. You're also going to hear that the defendant's purse is found in Todd Stermer's van in the front passenger area of that van. You are going to hear testimony from Troy Ernst, another scientist at the Michigan State Police Laboratory. He tested the clothing that was seized from Todd Stermer that day, and he tested for accelerants. You will hear his lab reports. January 15th, James Shinsky starts conducting his own fire investigation. During this investigation, he seizes several rags from the washer in the basement of the Stermer residence. These are collected by Mr. Shinsky and sent to a private laboratory for testing. We expect to present evidence to you from Craig Belliette. He's the chemist for Baker and Herbert Laboratories. He's also now retired. Many folks have retired since 2007. And he conducted an analysis of those rags that were seized from that washer by James Shinsky. January 26th, Mr. Balliet. On February 27th, Steve Willison, who's an attorney for Farm Bureau Insurance, also becomes involved. So again, part of the fire insurance investigation. Defendant sits for an examination under oath at the request of her insurance company. The plot starts to thicken. The statements start to become more descriptive, change. You'll hear how everything starts changing. Blame starts being shifted. Stories, statements, explanations continue to change. Linda gives a statement again about what happened on January 7th. And at that time, she implicitly denies having an extramarital affair. October 18th, several months now after the fire, it's still in 2007, Steve Willison sits with the defendant again for a second examination under oath. Talks to her again about the events of January 7th. They go over the details. They go over what doesn't make sense, what's not adding up. More questions are asked. More digging is done. Things don't make sense. I'm asking, as the evidence is presented, to focus on her statements. You will also hear from additional witnesses. Kate Fox is going to come in near the end. She was the former friend, actually best friend, of Linda Stermer. You're going to hear the statements that Ms. Stermer made to Kate Fox. Mr. Williams, Chris Williams, is going to come in. He's going to talk to you about how he started his extramarital affair with the defendant, knew she was married, knew her from work, 6 to 8 months prior to the fire. You're also going to hear from Kathy Ilg, another friend of the defendant, and statements that she made to Kathy. You're going to hear from Kim and Ken Thompson. They were also neighbors close by, not direct neighbors, but close by. They were actually on scene that day. They will tell you what they saw, what they heard, what the defendant said immediately after the fire in those days. You'll hear from Annette Crandall. She was also on scene on January 7th. You'll hear more statements that Linda made to her. At the end of the trial, we're going to hear from Trenton Stermer, Trevor Stermer, and Corey Pierce. All three are the sons of Todd and Linda Stermer. They were teenagers at the time of this fire. Now they're grown men. They're going to come in and talk to you. They're going to explain what it was like to live in the Stermer household. what the dynamics were, what the relationships were. They're going to talk to you about what happened that morning, the night before, to give you an insight as to what occurred in the hours preceding this fire. This trial is going to be, a lot of it's going to be about the evolution of Linda Stermer's statements. As people ask more and more questions to try to get to the root of what happened, to understand, to figure out what really went on. Just in the process of asking more questions, you're going to hear statements, how they change about the home life. You're going to hear statements that actually change about what happened in the morning of the fire. You're going to hear statements change about where Linda Stermer even exited the home, the most basic details. What door did you go out? You're going to hear her statements. You're going to hear her changing statements of what she observed. What did you see? Where was the fire? What did you see? And you're also going to hear a lot of missing details that may be shown by other evidence and that we expect to show you. Particularly important are the statements about running Todd Stermer over with the van. Statements about never seeing the defendant. Statements about why. Why would you drive to the back of the house on a walkout basement? Why? You'll hear them. At the end of this trial, ladies and gentlemen, all the boxes that we painstakingly went through in the beginning of this opening statement will be checked. And I am going to ask all of you to render a guilty verdict on counts 1 and count 2. Thank you very much.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Again, I want to thank you all for participating in this democratic process that we have in America. You are a very essential fiber to the blanket of rights that was embedded in the very doctrine that we all stand on and live with in these United States of America. And I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time, but this case is about a family. It's about an American family. It's about love. It's about dreams. An American dream most Americans have is to own a home, to own some property, to raise a family, and do the things that you love to do independently of anyone else. A family nucleus. The Stermer family was an American family. The marriage created an opportunity for them to grow together, an opportunity for them to purchase some land. On 2 occasions, this last occasion in which they purchased and they decided to build their own home. A family castle. Mr. Todd Stermer was very talented in reference to his skill sets of putting things together. And they set out on this journey with him, Linda, and the children, that they were going to build what they wanted to build on a lot of land that they could hunt, fish, be apart from anyone else, and have fun on their property. But it wasn't a totally isolated area. It was in the township of Lawrence, where most people have the same dream and desire to have some property, some space, to have their horses or their cattle or whatever pets. And it was the same thing with the Stermer family. They had horses, had dogs, cats, and had the vision of having many other things. They maintained their property themselves with all the natural and necessary machinery that goes with maintaining a large space of property. And so as the construction began, it got to a point where they realized that we've built this enough that we can move in. Even though it's not completed totally on the inside, all the build out wasn't completed, but it was enough to satisfy the occupancy for them. And they would continue the finishing of this project. And they didn't put a lot of money in a lot of fancy things. They lived in a common way. They didn't have a bunch of fancy cars. She stated the most important focus was the children, the school, their property, and the things that they enjoy among themselves. And in a township where the motto is, we grow together. And even though these neighbors live far apart, they all knew each other. And so, on January the 7th, 2007, very unfortunate tragedy occurred. On that morning, Miss Stermer and Mr. Stermer are at home. He's upstairs in his favorite place, watching TV, fireplace. And Miss Stermer is doing standard household chores. She's down in the lower part of the house. And the children are gone to the movies. And I don't want to give you any misdirected assumptions, but yes, as all families, they had some problems from time to time. But as I stated yesterday, in marriages, You have good days and you have bad days. And you always pray for more good days than bad days. And even the bad days, we work them out. We try to work them out. And on this day, there was a conversation in reference to working out some family matters. And sometimes you don't want your children to be privy to some of the conversations that adults need to address as it relates to the totality of the family, including the children. Sometimes that could elevate up to separation, divorce. But these things are what should be discussed among adults, not in the presence of children. And so that was the reason why the children was gone to the movies at the suggestion of Miss Stermer, that they were going to talk about some family issues that didn't need the children to be privy to. And so that brings us back to Miss Stermer and Mr. Stermer being in the house alone. There wasn't any fighting. There had been some arguments. Nothing physical. Nobody threatening anyone. As a matter of fact, Miss Stermer had earlier that day went to one of the local convenience stores. Gasoline for the car, purchase a few items, come back home, and she's there with her husband. And of all the things that could happen, she hears a scream that she's never heard before. A very scratching scream. And she runs upstairs, and as she gets to the top of the stairs, all she can see is fire. All she can see is her husband on fire. What could it be like to run to a door and see nothing but a gulf of flames and a human body that you can't get to? All sources of communication was in that room. Her cell phone. She had no way of calling anyone. And in a state of total panic and trauma, she runs down and she gets out of the house for the sole purpose of trying to go and seek aid, help. My house, my husband is on fire. She gets outside. It's cold. Had rained. Had snowed. The terrain around the house was not concrete. And therefore, she jumps in the van, a 1993 Ford. This is 2007. It's not a 2005. It's not 2006. It's a 1993 Ford. She jumps in the van, and after she gets in the van, she tries to maneuver out of the drive. And then she sees Mr. Stermer. Some kind of magical way, he had maneuvered out of the house on fire. And he was on fire. But when he got out of the house, she sees him, she gets out of the van, and she goes over to him and does everything she can do to try to help. Her body, the skin from a fire is coming off. She tries to pick him up, and she can't maneuver that. And so she tries to get him in a comfort place to just stay in one place until she can get back in the van and go and try to seek some help. And as she attempts to leave, she doesn't look down on the ground in some kind of way because of the involuntary movement of his body. His body is positioned in a way in which when she attempts to drive out and back up and go forward, his body is up under the center of the stand. By this time, the evidence will show that one of these very dear neighbors, several had seen the smoke in the sky, had called 911. And by the time one of the neighbors arrived, she was totally traumatized. And they said, "Where are the children?" And the evidence will show that they were finally advised the children was not in the house because everybody was concerned about who else was in the house. They could see the ball of smoke from a far distance apart. But no first responders are there for a while. Matter of fact, the very first people that are on the scene are all neighbors from the township of Lawrence. One individual was a doctor, not on duty, but he was a doctor. He arrived. You hear the evidence that there was a Mr. Matheny and his significant other, Miss Calhoun. They arrived. Because of his condition, they all was trying to figure out a way to provide some degree of comfort. And Mr. Matheny, who was a mechanic, opened his trunk and he had a lot of work clothes in his trunk. And he laid them on top of Mr. Stermer for some comfort. And the facts will show that where he was now positioned, there was a fuel furnace that was part of the heating system of the house that had been installed by the family, Mr. Stermer, as part of the building. Several individuals was concerned that this fuel furnace was going to explode. And so when the very first responder arrived, they decided to pick Mr. Stermer up and put him in a small little boat and move him far a distance from the house. And all at the same time, they're continuing to call in to 911 telling them, get somebody out here quick. And so when the first responders, supposed the ambulance arrived, they did all they could do. But there's one part of this that you have to understand, the trauma that Miss Stermer was going through at this time. When they were calling 911, they're at the scene. There is a voice that in no shape, form, or fashion that a human mind could assume that this could be a fake voice or a voice to cover something up. Can we hear the voice?
This is 1 p.m. 7th January 2007.
There's a fire. There's a house on fire.
A house on fire.
Yeah, 2150. He started 030. My address is the house right for it. I don't know.
03023.
My address is the house right for it. I just look like you.
You know if anybody lives there?
I do not. Yes, they live here.
Does anybody live back here?
I don't know. I don't know. I need to let you know. Oh my God. Oh, my God. Why are you doing my house? Why are you doing it? Oh, I need to get report it.
Okay, well, that's for on the way. What's your name, please?
My name is Linda Stermer's house.
Linda Stermer?
Yes, oh my God, she's outside. I don't know if people did it. Oh my God.
She is outside now?
She's outside. She's screaming something to my boyfriend.
Okay. Can you see what she's screaming?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to hear at the house. Like, I don't know where she is. Yes, she's freaking out. Oh my God. Please don't tell me.
Are you able to go outside with your cell phone and see?
Yes.
We just want to know if anybody's outside or not.
Is there anybody inside? Is there? Oh my God. Yes.
Hey, calm down. We got the fire department on the way there, okay? Dude, someone outside. It's been outside. Yeah. I need you to calm down, people. Okay, just calm down so you can help me. Do you know how many people are inside? She's got the one that's Is that Linda in the background? Where's your husband at? Did I talk to him? What's your husband's name? What's your husband's name? Is your husband inside her house? Okay. Let's talk to you. Can you give the phone to your husband so I can talk to him? Sir? Okay, is anybody still in the house? No one is in the house?
From that point on, this whole tragic event has destroyed a life. It's destroyed a family. And we will be able to show you that the destruction from this fire that there was a duty, an obligation for several individuals to do what was necessary to determine the origin and the cause of the fire. And that there is absolutely nothing through the totality of this investigation that puts any weapon in the hands of Linda Stermer. The links were never there. At this point, the investigation started with one person is alive and one person succumbed to the fire, and therefore one person must be the cause of the fire. That one person would be the person that they can talk to. And that's not the way it was supposed to be. The evidence will show that there was an accidental fire in a house, in a room that had burning candles, that had burning lamps, oil lamps, that had a fireplace, and that the location of where the fire started and how it began to grow was in the same room where Mr. Stermer was. Not where Miss Stermer was, because she was down in the lower part of the house doing laundry and chores. And they started their investigation with this rush to judgment. We are going to make something because we think we have hunches. And what they did was, as she stated, when they arrived, one person decides that I'm just going to take the pants off of this individual that is lying here suffering and taking his last breaths. What little he's got on, with a burned up body, I'm going to take his pants off. Because I think I smell an accelerant. And the pants that got tested, their laboratory say it came back with an accelerant. Don't say where the accelerant came from. But we will show that this oil furnace that was installed by Mr. Stermer is part of their heating system in the house, along with the fireplaces, that the oil furnace had some problems, and that from time to time the oil furnace had to be bled. And so in bleeding the oil furnace, Mrs. Stermer had done that the day before, and he had used some of the towels in the house, and these towels were left down in the lower part of the house. And so, accelerant in reference to the household issues and needs on the outside was a common activity of use. They're going to tell you about a gasoline can. And on this property, they probably had 6 gasoline cans. Because what do you use gasoline for if you on a farm? Every machinery you have is oil and gasoline. Petroleum. And any one of those is combustible, right? Can start a fire. Sometimes with a match, and sometimes without. But the facts will be, for sure, that the cause of the fire was not by a human act, but it was clearly because of some flaw that existed in the upper part of the house. So they take these pants. But what you will also know, that this very same day, evening, and moment after that 911 call that you heard, and when the first responders arrived, and Van Buren County Sheriff's officers arrived, you're going to know what happened was that they told Miss Stermer, "Can we have your clothes?" Now, evidence will show that she has laid down on top of her husband, begging and pleading, "Don't leave me." She has his blood on her clothes, hugging and embracing him. She had previously tried to pick him up. And they say, when they realized that Mr. Stermer is not going and didn't survive, so placing him in the ambulance, it was now time for the coroner's office. But they told Miss Stermer, "Can we have your clothes? Come get in the ambulance." And one of the dear friends that lives in the neighborhood, in the area, had showed up also on the scene. She says, "I'll go to the house and get some clothes for you to put on." And so they took all of her clothes in the ambulance, gave them to Van Buren County officer, and the evidence will show that after they receive her clothes and she's able to put some clothes on that's brought to her from a friend's house, that they test these clothes, her clothes. She cooperated 100%. She didn't say, "You don't have a warrant? Am I under arrest? I don't need a warrant I'm going to do whatever I need to do to find out what happened. But you wouldn't think that you'd be the immediate one to the point that at this point of your life and you being totally traumatized and experiencing this wretched incident that's taken everything from you. Your castle, your husband, your children's father. You want my clothes, but I'm going to give you my clothes. They take those clothes. They have them chemically, forensically analyzed. And the evidence will show that when the test came back, there was zero of any scintilla of any type of accelerant. And an interesting twist about all of this now is that we're thinking that this should be investigated by law enforcement, but all of a sudden, here comes the insurance people. And the evidence will show that Ms. Stermer didn't even know if their insurance was paid up on the house. There had been some financial issues. Things had gotten behind from time to time. But Mr. Stermer was in control of managing those affairs for the house. And the insurance people, they tell Ms. Stermer that no, your insurance was not paid up. But if you will go downtown and write a check to the insurance agent, we will consider your insurance back in force. And that's what she did. And then the insurance people, they started doing what they do, and many times what they do is to see how much money they can keep from paying out on a claim. And so they started this investigation of just trying to interrogate, take depositions, twist questions upside down so they could get the narrative that they wanted. And at the end of the day, they get their narrative. So they come out to the house 2 days after the fire, tell Ms. Stermer, meet us out to your property. Don't have the decency to say, come to our office. This lady is now homeless. The children are homeless. All the belongings are gone. But the courtesy that's extended to her for the insurance is that I'm going to drive out to your property that's been burned down, and I would like for you to meet me. And she cooperates. Her mother, one of her friends, and the insurance person says, we need to talk to you. They put her in their car, and that's where they conduct their interview. And then that's not enough, so they come back another day and do the same thing at the property, in the car. And Ms. Stermer has cooperated 100% with them through this whole process. Hasn't delayed, didn't do anything but whatever they asked her to do. And so that's within the first weeks, 3 weeks and months. And then all of a sudden they started providing some financial relief, temporary under the policy. And then what's more tragic about this is, as you said, this happened January the 7th of 2007. The destruction continued for almost 2 years. Before any charges were filed. They went on every degree of a witch hunt that you can imagine. Every person that knew Miss Linda Stermer, they went and talked to. It was so grotesque that they even started looking at Mr. Stermer, the deceased, as the cause, maybe, of the fire. But what they never did was a true investigation for the origin and the cause of the fire. And the evidence will show that because of the fact that they can never and did never try to make any attempt to determine the cause of the fire, they have absolutely nothing that they can put in the hands of Miss Linda Stermer as causing the arson or the fire. And therefore, there is absolutely nothing of an element that they can meet of an arson. Talk about an affair. Talk about some disgruntled friend. Talk about somebody that had a dispute with you, that don't like you. And you're going to use that and connect that to say, okay, we can go all the way back to 2 years ago and we can make this show that, yes, she committed this fire. They go as far as when they do arrest Miss Stermer, they put her in jail. And they put her in jail with other females. And shortly after she's in jail, the evidence will show they start pulling people out of the jail. You know this Stermer lady? You were in the cell with her? She tell you anything about her husband? She tell you anything about what happened, why she's in jail? Yeah, she says, I'm in jail because they accused me of burning my house down and my husband died, and so they charged me with murder and arson. But every last one of these people that they spend a whole lot of time interviewing in the jail, every last one of them give them a different narrative of what they think they want to hear. And we call those people jailhouse snitches. But I leave you with this. Every last one of us is blessed to have the rights that we have in America. Accusations are accusations. But that fiber that I talked about earlier, that presumption of innocence, that beyond a reasonable doubt, those are some very, very strong threads that we get to wear every day. In this case, throughout the duration of this trial, you won't hear nothing from the defense other than the fact that there is no direct evidence. There is no circumstantial evidence. And the beauty of all of that is that the law states that you can't convict someone on conjecture. You can't convict someone on speculation. You can't convict someone because somebody didn't like the way she talked. You can't convict someone on somebody that you think that they was having some type of look or an affair or a conversation with another person under any shape, form, or fashion in America. That's not our society. That's not our foundation. Our foundation is what it's supposed to be, and you have the evidence that we're going to present in the defense of Linda Stermer. That justice shall prevail for this lady who's had to suffer through all of this since that day of January 2007. And you will bring back what is fair and what is just under the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of this state, and the laws that are so embedded in each one of our lives. Thank you.
We'll take our morning break. We'll take about a 15-minute break. Please remember the admonitions for the table for no discussing the case with each other or anybody else. Do not get any news reports that may come your way. If something pops up on your phone, for example, delete it.